Alright, so it's no secret that a lot of players are feeling super burned out by the current metagame. And whether you're playing online or at events or literally just watching from the sidelines, something feels very off. And today we're going to be breaking down the core reasons of why people are unsatisfied with how the game is played right now. From turn skips to how necessary hand traps are, and also the impact of power cards that warp games all on their own. And we're not just complaining, we're looking at why these trends are so frustrating, how we got here, and also what needs to change to make the game more fun and competitive in the future as well. If this topic interests you, make sure to continue watching and also like the video if you enjoy it, as well as share your thoughts in the comments down below. So let's jump straight into it. So first up, turn skips. It's actually crazy how many unhealthy cards there are in the metagame right now. If I just start listing them off the top of my head, from Ouroboros to Harpy's Featherstorm, obviously Statue, Protoss, like you could just go on and on and on, and all of these cards are mainly played in different decks. So if you take a look at the metagame as a whole, you can see that every single one of the competitive decks has to have an unfair turn skip card to be able to compete. And that's a huge issue all on its own. And in my opinion, all of these cards should be banned on the ban list. And please don't say that cards like Protoss, etc. are win more, because a lot of players have that argument. Oh, if you're resolving Protoss, then you're winning already. I don't think we should be trying to justify the existence of those cards and trying to say that we're okay with them being in the format because our opponent is winning already. A lot of times, specifically these cards are game-changing, and that should not be the case. If you're playing a deck that can make Castell, and then you go thrust into Harpy's Featherstorm, how is that okay? Also, let's talk about the fact that these turn skip cards are crazy going first. And going first is already too broken to begin with. I just feel like as soon as one deck does it, there's the need for every single one of the other decks to do it too. So again, like I keep emphasizing, I think all of these cards should be addressed in one way or another, because God knows going first is crazy already and we don't need more broken cards. So I want to talk about today something I already touched upon a little bit in the topic I was just talking about, which is how tough it really is to go second. We had formats where there was more back and forth and you actually had a way of going second. If you compare the last couple of Raizio-dominated formats to Snake Eyes before that, going second was practically impossible. If Snake Eyes resolved their full combo, you truly weren't winning because there were just physically too many interactions and you needed very, very specific cards. Going second became even harder because of one-card combos. So yes, our topic is one-card combos. And I know at this point, this is pretty much a triggering expression to you guys and to me as well, because as soon as Konami introduced one-card combos into the game, this really snowballed out of control. From how heavy decks became on the non-engine to how tough it is to actually interact, everything shifted, everything changed, and it's just super hard to compete, period. Because multiple things happen. Number one, you can't really disrupt your opponent with one or two well-timed hand traps. You need more, because a one-card combo is exactly that. You have 4 other cards to extend further, or have hand traps for your opponent's turn if they interrupt you enough, but you're probably winning. And another thing is that because you need to play all of these hand traps, you're so heavy on a non-engine when you're building your deck, you're either completely ruining your consistency, which is quite a problem, or you come to the conclusion that you just cannot compete with that particular deck you chose. And it feels like they truly stopped introducing decks that have 2 to 3 card combos. If you think about Mitsurugi before it became this crazy version of Mitsurugi right now with all the support cards, you actually had to think about what was in your hand and how you can continue playing, because there wasn't one particular set one-card combo, and the deck was still crazy broken. So this just goes to show that we don't need one-card combos for decks to do well. In my opinion, if one-card combos cease to exist, then we go back and print decks and support that actually feel more interactive and easily beatable, this is the way forward. Because what happens when you're in a meta with a lot of non-engine present in decks? Hand comparison, hand trap wars, and that's never a good thing. Because it comes down to who opens better. And a lot of times we have to realize that when we're losing, it's not always because our hands are bad. We make mistakes, we misplay, we don't play out our hands optimally, we can't break a board. There's a whole lot of reasons why we might be losing. However, there are instances when you just cannot or could not do anything differently, and your opponent literally just had that hand trap or an out or an answer that really stops you in your tracks. And with the amount of non-engine in the meta right now, these kinds of scenarios keep happening and they are much more frequent, and that's a big problem. With that, I also want to segue into the next topic, which is number 3 on today's list of issues, and that's the fact that, and yes, it is a fact, that board breakers are less and less impactful compared to hand traps. So are board breakers actually losing their purpose? Because with the crazy boards that are getting built right now, you cannot, I think, imagine a scenario where you play a going second deck with a bunch of board breakers. And yes, let me stop right here. I know Gem Knight did crazy well at NEWCQ with board breakers. That is definitely the case. But you have to keep in mind that in a lot of instances, there are multiple reasons why a deck does well. In the case of Gem Knight, people maybe don't really know how to disrupt it. It's fairly new. It was the correct event to play that deck, but there's something to be said about the fact that this is the only deck that can comfortably, or quite comfortably, try and go second with board breakers, and that's the big issue. Looking ahead into the future, and I know I haven't touched much on the future just yet, the decks that are coming out in Justice Hunters, I think, are going to shift the meta drastically. So we'll see and maybe revisit this issue in a month or 2 months' time to see if things actually changed for the better, because there are decks that actually get quite hurt by some board breakers. I still do think, though, with one-card combos, crazy extension possibilities that decks have, you need to play hand traps because you're not realistically going to be breaking boards. And it's crazy to think that in recent years, cards like Forbidden Droplet, Dark Ruler, etc., Lightning Storm, Thrust were released, and they are not doing enough for us to be comfortable to play board breakers over hand traps, and that really says something about the current format. Staying on topic of hand traps, because that's pretty much the talk of today's video apparently, let's talk about something that, trigger warning, is very much present in this current format, and that is Joel and Lockbird. Now, I could probably make a whole video on its own about this card and what people think, whether or not it should be banned or not, but a lot of times people say that presence of Joel in the format says a lot about the format and how unhealthy it truly is. I would love to know your thoughts, so please let me know in the comments, should Droll be banned or is it okay to exist? So is Droll, and also Mistaken Arrest, because people do play that too, a type of lockdown turn skip card like the ones we talked about before, or do we need it because decks are that crazy? It's a problem because a lot of times other decks and strategies are going to suffer when cards like Droll and, for example, that used to be Shifter too, are present in the format to beat specific decks. Should we have Draw in our binder for any kind of format that arises? Or should this card just be banned because it's literally preventing you from playing? Like, I genuinely want to hear your thoughts and spark a discussion about this but I think one of the biggest problems with both of these cards, that being Draw and Mistaken Arrest, is the fact that you can have them going first after establishing a board. It's not like a Charmy, because you're not going to be Fuvalusing your opponent after making a full board, but with Draw and Mistaken Arrest, you can add that as layered interruption, and I think that's the biggest issue. And with that, I also want to talk about some other cards that are completely crazy going first, and that's why they are limited currently, because they're literally adding things on top of your already established strategy, or rather, pushing it through. And I think you have an idea of what I'm talking about. Called by Talents Cross Out. These cards are completely crazy, and them being one-offs right now just makes it so they are completely sacky. They decide games on their own, and they make it so your combo goes through when it realistically shouldn't, because like we already established, going second is tough already. And I also get the other side of the coin, because a lot of times a well-timed Charmy or even a draw, like we already talked about, would completely stop your turn. So at that point, what's more fair? It's very tough to talk about these things because it's not just a black and white issue. Yeah, we kind of need our cards to go through, but like, it's also very broken if I'm called buying your Charmy because you're realistically not winning at that point. It's tough because I think when you draw called by, you're super happy. But when it gets played against you, you're literally tilted. And games shouldn't be decided by these types of cards. They are though, and that's very, very unfortunate. There's more to be said on this issue, but for the last topic I want to talk about today is Charmies. Whether or not Charmies are actually healthy, and in my honest opinion, they definitely are. I think Charmies should exist. They should not be semi-limited or limited because God knows going second needs help. And Charmies, in my opinion, are fair cards because you cannot layer them on top of a board like we already talked about with draw and mistaken arrest and all of that before. Also think about the fact that when you are playing Charmies, if you have them in your main deck because the format calls for it, which is the case right now, and you're going first, a lot of times they can be dead cards in your opening combo game 1. So that's one problem. They can be dead cards getting drawn into, another problem. And also Purulia, for example, which is a very specific Charmy, it's not good against every single strategy. So if we're in a format like right now where you need Purulia against certain decks, but it's going to be a little subpar against others, you're going to have to take that into account when you're deck building and come to terms with the fact that sometimes you're going to be drawing dead cards against certain matchups. So even when it comes to Charmies, there are pros and cons to playing them, even though they're broken cards that a lot of players seem to have issues with. So with all of that being said, I think I've given you quite a few things to think about. And yes, there's no denying that the current format does have issues, but the meta changes and power shifts and improvements happen. So if you are feeling frustrated, you're definitely not alone, but we are getting Justice Hunters. The format is going to shift and there's always going to be another ban list, another meta, and another chance to make the game better. So let me know down in the comments what's been bothering you and which sorts of changes you would like to see. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. It really does mean a lot because these are important issues we have to talk about. So if you found this video relatable in any way or you enjoyed it, please do consider giving it a like. And if you're enjoying my content, don't forget to sub and ding the bell so you're always notified when I post. With that, thank you again, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.